You know, I don't like to do overtly political videos. I always like to try and focus on bigger issues. But I do want to open this one. You know, things that actually matter. Because to me, politics is, if you focus on politics, you're focusing, politics is the window dressing. And I like to focus on what's actually going on. But I do want to open by saying that the GOP is throwing away a huge political opportunity by not becoming the party of lower gas prices. The Biden administration has made it clear that the Democratic Party is officially the party of high-priced fuel of all kinds, of high energy prices. That's what they're running on. They're trying to push us into, a big transition to, so-called green energy. And the way that they're doing that is by artificially inflating the price of fossil fuels. It's as simple as that. They're trying to take the option, the obviously superior and more efficient option of fossil fuels off the table so that all of the investment gets driven into green energy. The result of which will be a systemic contraction in the output of Western economies. You cannot produce the amount of energy that we are currently consuming via these so-called green alternative sources. And so the end result will be that we will just have to we'll just have to get by with less energy. And so where is the GOP coming out and openly and going as hard against this as possible, offering up an alternative, saying, you know what, screw the Greta Thunbergs of the world, screw the EPA and their phony court case, which they just got smacked in the face by the Supreme Court. Screw the great green grifters. Screw all these solar panel and wind panel grifters like Greg Abbott. And let's, again, speaking as if I were the GOP, if I were running the show, let's become the party of cheap energy, of affordable energy, of economic prosperity. Isn't that what the GOP has always, even the cringy, corporate GOP, isn't that what they've always tried to be? Or are they so captured by Wall Street that they can't possibly question the ESG narrative and agenda? Biden is going so far now, he's just throwing the kitchen sink at the issue of gas prices. He's again today on Twitter blaming gas station owners of all people for the price of gas, calling on gas station owners to just cut prices. Oh yeah, we'll just bring it back down to $2 a gallon. Thanks for the idea, Joe. We hadn't thought of that. As if gas stations aren't, one of the most competitive businesses in the country. As if it were possible for gas station owners to cut gas prices that they wouldn't have already done it. Even someone as demented as Joe Biden knows that this isn't true. He's just trying to muddy the waters. If he's asked directly, he does admit that the reason why we're paying for higher gas prices is because the U.S. is trying to own Russia. They want to punish Putin for invading Ukraine, despite the fact that Putin never tried to punish America for invading Syria. Putin could have cut off all gas to Europe in retaliation. He could have cut off oil to the United States over the U.S. invasion of Syria. He never did it. And you know what? In Biden's defense, this isn't even entirely true. This idea that it's all because of the war in Ukraine and because we have to pay higher gas prices to defend Ukraine and stand up for the liberal world order. The now infamous words of Brian Deese, the White House something or other, somebody on the board of economic advisors or something, White House economic advisors, I forget. I don't think he's the chairman of it even, but he's BlackRock's former ESG guy. That's who he is. Basically the BlackRock director of diversity and inclusion. That's who's running America's economic policy and is proclaiming that the poors will just have to deal with $5 a gallon gas because we have to stand up for liberalism. Global liberalism needs your money. Global lib wants to own you, own your house, own your car, and own your body. And that's not an exaggeration. Global Lib does want to own your car. They want you to be stuck with this ride-hailing service. They want a fleet of driverless Ubers, electric Ubers, to take everybody to and fro. They want to own your house. They want you to rent a single-family home from BlackRock, where this guy used to work. They want to own your body. They want to force whatever vaccines or any other kind of medication that Big Pharma is trying to sell and peddle. They want to force it onto you so that they have a captive customer base. It's all a part of a very simple plot to create a planet of 7 billion, or however many people we have now, multiple billions of dedicated and reliable consumers, spell that CONSOOMER. They just want to farm these consumers and milk them like the little cows that they are. And so if you have to pay $5 a gallon to big oil, so be it, because big oil is going to take all those windfall profits and put them into green energy. That's what this is all going to come down to. When Congress starts talking about a windfall profit tax, that's just to make sure that big oil doesn't take that money and reinvest it back into oil exploration. They want big oil to take all the money that they're getting off of their existing wells and put it into wind farms and solar farms, which take up tons and tons of real estate, which will increasingly force us all into mid-rise apartment buildings. The new choice of global cap are these 5-story wood frame apartment buildings that are going up all across the country like Khrushchevkas. They're just you just see everywhere that there's an interstate or some major road, global cap is just coming and dropping these 5-story apartment buildings out of the sky. They all look the same, and eventually we will all live in these same apartments with these same floor plans on streets with the same names, and we could have our own version of what was the name of that Soviet movie from the 70s where this guy falls asleep in the airport, and he ends up on the wrong flight, and he flies to the wrong city and ends up going to, he gives the taxi driver his address, and he goes to his room, and it turns out that, his address was like 49 Karl Marx Prospect or something, and of course, because all these Soviet cities are the same, there is a 49 Karl Marx Prospect in Leningrad, even though he was trying to go to Moscow or something like that. And the building at 49 Karl Marx Prospect looks exactly like the building at 49 Karl Marx Prospect in his city. And he goes up into the elevator, and the hallways all look the same. And he goes to his room number and goes and lays down on the bed and finds that it's not his apartment. When the real resident, a woman, comes home, hilarity ensues. It's a classic Russian romantic comedy. We in America, once GlobalCap completes their takeover of our society, we could have a very similar movie made. And isn't it funny? As years go by, the more GlobalCap begins to resemble Globocom, and yet neither of the two political parties, the major parties, are willing to offer an alternative to this. You'd think it'd be pretty easy to sell. If I were in charge of the Republican messaging, I think I'd come up with something pretty simple. I'd just clip together all these Democrats saying how we're going to have high gas prices forever, and that's all a part of the plan, and you're just going to have to deal with it until we have green energy or until Putin leaves Ukraine, which is never happening. It's just not going to happen. As Barack Obama said back in the day, the Russians care much more about Ukraine than we ever will. So when push comes to shove, they're going to win. Unless our leaders are just that butt stupid and they decide that Ukraine is the hill we're going to die on, because we will die on it. This isn't that complicated. I figured it out. I wasn't the first to figure it out. Many people have figured this out. The solution to what ails us is simple. Drill, baby, drill. It used to be a phrase that was very popular amongst Republicans. They stopped it a few years ago when they finally sold out to the Green movement once and for all. But don't you think that the Greens have been so disastrous at this point that the Republicans could go back to that? Aren't they supposed to be conservatives? Aren't they supposed to be looking to the past and say, hey, you know what worked in the past and what worked a lot better than what we're doing now? Yeah, why don't we go back to that? I'm not saying they push anything radical. This is about as bland and boring as you can get. I think that the next big political star in this country is going to be the first person who realizes, hey, we need more oil, and we're not going to get off of oil. It's not going to go away. Oil's not scarce. We can get as much oil out of the ground as we need for the foreseeable future. It's down there, so we got to use it. We don't have a better alternative. If we had a better alternative, we'd already be using it because it would be cheaper, even at these highly elevated prices of oil, which are killing us. Oil is still cheaper than all of these alternatives. And if they want to cry about global warming, why don't you point out that much of this planet is currently frozen? We've got a lot that we can warm up. Oh, well, it could flood some beach houses owned by billionaires. Oh, boo-hoo. A warmer planet, if the planet actually warmed, we'd have longer growing seasons. We'd have more food to feed our growing global population. These are good things. We would be worried if the planet was cooling, because cooling would mean that it had less energy, that it had less warmth from the sun, that we had less life, and that we would be able to not sustain as much life. Think about it. When things get cold, molecules slow down. You know, and the Republicans, they can go back to their, to their own, sort of, well, I don't know. You don't want to make your messaging boring. But I mean, in their own head, they can think of this as the government is meddling in energy markets. That's all it is. And that's true. That's something that your average mainstream Republican politician is not supposed to like. They're telling us, okay, we got to use this other stuff instead of oil. We can't invest in oil. And that's what the big banks are saying, too. The big banks are just obviously an arm of the regime. They're all a part of the regime. But, we're already in the election year. We're halfway through. We're just a few months away from the midterms. And I'm not hearing anyone articulate this. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.